Hi, this is Chase Bethea, and you're listening to We Are One, You Are Two, a PlayStation podcast.
Welcome to another episode of We Are One, You Are Two, a PlayStation and video game podcast. I'm your host, Robert Fanzo, joined today by Matt Rhodes.
Hey,
and Chase Bethea.
Hey, how's it going?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Surviving over here. Surviving in California, Los Angeles.
Yeah, you've got a rough time over there last week.
Yeah, it's been hell, literally.
Now, just out of curiosity, when stuff like that happens, I mean, because you compose, does any of that in an odd way inspire you or strike you to want to write or compose?
Yeah, actually, because I was actually evacuated a little bit around like Friday afternoon or something like that, I was having major withdrawals with music. And so luckily I have this app on my phone where I can kind of get a few of my ideas out. Or if I dream melodies, I hum the melody in the phone as soon as I wake up so that I don't lose it. But I did manage to write a little bit. The house that I was staying at, the host was a musician. And so I was playing on this keyboard and practicing my chops. And then I started to feel a little bit better. But before then, I was having a lot of back pain. It affected me a lot. The music and the feeling that I was experiencing with the situation came out a little bit through there. So I wrote a little 2 or 4 bars, and I wrote actually 2 different tunes that day. And maybe I'll finish them. Maybe I won't. Maybe they'll just be incorporated in something else. I'm not sure.
Okay. I was curious because I know when there's somebody that writes, when I read about some of that stuff or I see it, and I mean, obviously it's very different experiencing it. I get odd moments of inspiration. And so, I can imagine that would, sometimes that's a good way of processing or handling that stuff too, is just being able to kind of work through music or whatever kind of drives you.
Yeah, I'm actually I was thinking a lot about, this was the first time I had to evacuate for at least a fire. And well, I think it's like the second time. The first time was a long, long time ago, but I was a child, so it was way back when. But I was thinking, it actually ties into what I'm about to say, is when I was a child, I had a harmonica. And I don't know what happened to that harmonica. And recently, after the past couple of years, I would say I've been pensioned to want to buy one. And so I was thinking, dang, it would have been a nice time to have that harmonica so I could have wrote something about how I feel and get the ideas out and all that stuff. So now for next time, I'll have that harmonica. God forbid I get evacuated, but just in case, it's cool to kind of like have around.
Awesome.
it's pretty interesting that it like kind of manifests itself in like physical pain. Like you're like that stress of like having to evacuate and like not being in your like familiar surroundings or being able to do what you love to do. It kind of like manifests in that way.
Yeah, it's as I've been playing and composing more every single day, the transcribing and the writing process has gotten a lot stronger. And so what I've been actually thinking about subconsciously and consciously was how other composers have put their emotions into the music. And I've done this often, but the last project I was working on last year that shipped was a visual novel called Reality. And that's where I really put everything I had into that. And so I'm adjusting the feelings that I've been going through this year into the new project that I'm on now. I can't really relate to people like characters in the sense. I have to kind of put it into like areas and moods and things of such. And it's showing, I think, in terms of like when the music comes out for the different areas that are in the game. That
makes a lot of sense to me. What I was going to say was too, if we could just for a second, Chase, back up a little bit too, because we definitely got into some good ideas here. But could we back up for just a second? For those of you who don't know who you are, can you kind of give us a little bit of like a biopsy or a little bit of who is Chase? And where have you been? What have you been up to? What have you been doing? And then we can kind of talk a little bit more about where that's led to you to now with the music and such. But just for our listeners who don't know who you are, could you kind of fill them in a little bit?
Sure. As Rob Matt has introduced me, I'm Chase Bethea. I'm a video game composer and sound designer. I've been working professionally in the industry for close to 8 years now. And I've shipped about 16 games or so within the 6 years that I've been working. I was nominated for a award for I Can't Escape Darkness in 2016. And that was really humbling considering it was encompassing all the video game composers in the industry at the time. So I have been working hard to hopefully win one of the awards coming up, but I specialize mostly in games. I'm a gamer first at heart. I grew up in Chicago, Illinois most of my life, and then I came out to Los Angeles kind of around 15 years ago, finished off, went to college I earned 3 degrees in audio engineering and music composition and then media composition. I do sound design, implementation. I'm about to start learning some programming for C# to do audio programming. I do arranging, editing, all that stuff.
Cool.
What made you decide to get into sound design in the regard for games, especially because I know just being if you're musically inclined, that's not always a first choice, I would think, for people.
I worked at a internet media company about 12 years ago called Music Plus Television, or that was also when it became incorporated, Blaze TV. And I was the audio engineer at the time. And then I was like, I don't want to really do this too much longer, guys. So can we hire someone else? So we hired someone from my rival school, quote unquote, back then, which was Musicians Institute, excuse me. And I had graduated from the Los Angeles Recording School. So I moved they say like, oh, we need beats and we need compositions and stuff for our content. Like, can you do it? And I was like, yeah, I could do it. So I was 19 at the time. I not only became front of house engineer at that young age, but then I moved into writing that music. And then they were like, we need sound design too. So you got to be like the audio guy all around. So can you do the band management and the audio engineering and the music and the sound? And I was like, sure. Because I had just got out of school and I had a job from that company. I was interning there and I got hired before I graduated. So I was like, yeah, I could do the sound design. And that's why I taught myself sound design for post-production at that time.
Okay. Awesome.
Cool.
You mentioned that you're a gamer at heart. What do you think it is just on that level, removing the music aspect? What do you think it is that appeals to you about games that has kind of kept you around or kept you interested in them as well?
Let's see. My cousin came from Barbados to visit around sometime, I want to say 94, 95 or something like that. And he brought with him a Game Boy. And he had the game Donkey Kong 1996 on it. So yeah, maybe it was like 96 he came, because that was the time the game came out. I played that game and I became enamored. I begged my grandmother for a Game Boy in that specific game. Long story short, I broke that Game Boy based off of level 7 of the airplane because I was frustrated. But needless to say, I got 2 other Game Boys after that. And I broke it with my forehead, mind you. And I didn't think the screen would crack. And I headbutt the Game Boy and it totally cracked.
You headbutted the Game Boy?
I headbutt the Game Boy on the first time it cracked and I had to put it in the trash. It goes $89 to $90 down the drain.
Oh my gosh. That's a hard head.
Yeah, so from there I just was playing games. One of my best friends, he had a Sega Genesis. He had promised me that I was going to get his Jaguar that his aunt had gave him, but I never got that. And so I graduated to an N64 until I moved with my father, and then I got to play his PlayStation, and then he bought me my own Sega Genesis around Christmas time because that was kind of phasing out around the time, and he got like 23 something games from Hollywood Video for a killer deal, and that was my system. And so from there, I didn't purchase my first console until I moved out to California, which was the PlayStation 2. And my first game I had was God of War, and I played everything under the sun. I had played emulators before then. I was trying to figure out how they worked when I saw them in the magazine. I read about them. And so I got caught up on things like Chrono Trigger and the Gundam game on Game Boy and a couple other games I can't remember. Oh, Crusader of Senti, that has to be mentioned. Not a lot of people know that game. That game is very expensive if you look for it now. It's one of Atlas' first games on Sega, Beyond Oasis, et cetera, et cetera. I've been playing games since I was about 6 years old. It's kind of like when people say they've been playing an instrument since that time, but I was the geek and the nerd that had Final Fantasy Legend 2 on my Game Boy and would put on the sound test and just listen to it as if it was like the radio and just have it on loop and just never turn it off until the batteries died. And I guess that kind of filtered into my sound. And so I never took into account that this is where it would take me until 7 years of trying to do different type of music, which is like hip hop and R&B. People always told me, hey, it just sounds like it should be in a video game. I never listened to them until one day when I was at the intermediate company. They said, oh, this sounds like it should be in Castle Crashers. And then the light bulb went off. Like, what the hell? So is this possible to get music in a video game or something? Because that was the link that I had to figure out since I've been told that for the majority of my life, since I started making music around the time I kind of got the Game Boy.
I was going to ask you what games you thought influenced your music now, or even starting out. Because being able to listen to a soundtrack like that over and over again definitely, or listen to something on loop like that, definitely has that effect on you where it kind of rattles around in your brain, I think, for a while and keeps you in that mindset. So is there a particular, would you say that was the particular game, or is there a particular game that you feel really even now influences everything you do?
Not any particular games now influence me, in the sense because I am sometimes not listening. I'm always listening to video game music, but sometimes during the project, I'm trying to be careful about what I listen to so I don't soak it up, because I can sometimes soak it up very fast. But the cool thing is I can still kind of listen to it and know that what that game music applies to is to that game, and appreciate it for that. Like, one thing I kind of like to do, normally I don't like to listen to video game music without playing the game first, but because I've just been studying video game music for the past couple of years, like in terms of transcribing and doing theory work with it, it's becoming a little bit more intense. I'm influenced by what I think could work with a project, but I'm not necessarily utilizing it all the time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And I guess that makes sense too. I can understand completely not wanting to soak in music while you're working, because then you don't want to wind up accidentally leaking it back out, I guess.
Right.
To continue that analogy into your own stuff. Right. So when you're working, then does that kind of deter you from playing at all, or do you just kind of play with the sound off? No,
I definitely play. Well, since most of the projects that I've been on, the music thankfully hasn't had too many reference tracks, especially in the game. They've been outside. So if I need to listen to what the client or game developer gives me, I can listen to that a bunch of times and dissect it to understand what they're looking for. And then I'm able to put my own spin on it and definitely not have it sound like it's the same thing. Just have it be its own. And so I feel most composers that I've been hearing lately, as opposed to like maybe the past 5 or 10 years, some of them say like, oh, I don't have time to play games, I have to write the stuff. It's like, and I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice by not playing the games that maybe you're working on, or others to get inspired by, to have like references to go by, to understand maybe cool implementation ideas, or how that music works with that game and why it works so well. I think that's important too. That's something I do is if I'm going to listen to the music, I need to play the game with the music. And I think that's what happens. That's where I'm able to separate it, whereas I'm not absorbing it in the way musically, because I'm still seeing it as a collective art form.
Okay. Makes perfect sense.
Would you ever get into a game and like you're kind of so into the music that you start to kind of dissect it in the way you would for like as like research, or do you kind of turn that bit off while you're playing?
No, sometimes there will be some really cool moments in the game, and I'm like, dang, that's so tight. I need to figure out how they did that. And I'll push myself to keep playing. But what will happen is I'll turn that off. And this is where that whole child thing comes back into play. I'll turn it off, and then I'll be away, or I'll cook, or I'll be cleaning, or doing whatever, and then I'll hear that music. If it stuck onto me, right? If it made an imprint, and I'll just start singing it, and then if I start singing it, I want to hear it again. So if I start hearing it, I'm like, oh well, I've already played the game, so I could justify listening to it. And then I go listening to it, and then I start dissecting it, and I start playing the piano, and then it's a whole rabbit hole that goes down, and I'm like, oh, that's how they did it. And so I get excited, and then I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I feel satisfied.
Nice. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is amazing. It's something I think people don't understand how hard it can be to shut your brain off when you work in something and you enjoy it as a hobby as well. And so if you're constantly composing, there's always going to be that risk that you're dissecting what you're listening to in a game. And I know the voice actors we've talked to sometimes are more cognizant of performances because they are on the other side of that as well. And so I think that's hard for people to realize. Sometimes it's just hard to shut your brain off, even if you want to, in doing that. So where was I going with that? See, it's one of those things. I got my thinking about it. Yeah, I know.
It's okay.
I had a really good point I was going with. That's all right. That's as I say to my students, moving on. That's just the way it is.
Sometimes you just ramble yourself right out of the topic.
You do. So, you know what? I have my snafus. It's okay. That's all right. So what I was going to ask is, do you find that there are any common misconceptions that people have about you as somebody who produces and composes for games, that they just assumptions they may make? Or is there anything that you feel like people don't recognize or realize enough about creating music for games that you feel like you should clarify when you talk with them or interact with them, who are maybe outside of the gaming industry?
That's a really good question. Those are actually really two good questions. The latest misconception I've been getting is that I'm only a chiptune composer, and I'm not. And I actually release multiple soundtracks that are not chiptune. I've released an orchestral soundtrack and a hybrid orchestral and an electronic style, and only about maybe 2 chiptune original soundtracks, I want to say. So I find it interesting that, and this happens with musicians that I've talked to and other composers as well, is if they introduce me like, oh yeah, here's Chase, he's an amazing chiptune composer. It's like, well, no, I'm a composer. I can write for orchestra, and I can write electronic, and I can write jazz, and I can write ambient, and yes, I can write 8-bit style music. I can do it a lot with the variety. That's why I entered into being a composer, so I can learn all those styles and varieties and have a myriad of things that will work for projects that I want to maybe work on. That is an interesting thing that not only musicians, but other people who may have listened to my music before might get into a loop of. And I just want to invite them to not marginalize a musician based off of probably what you hear most from that person, but to go beyond and explore other pieces that they've made. Like, I have beautiful piano pieces that I debuted last year at a concert. They're on YouTube. Some people could find them. Some, if they had asked or they looked. It's just, I just find it's just very important not to marginalize those type of styles or that style to that composer. Or to say that composer can only do sound design, or that sound designer can only do composition. If you do audio and you do something multiple things well, I think you should just commend them for all the things that they do well and go forward from that. The second part is, I think a lot of people don't realize how much work it takes to be creative, and how many emotions and stress marks, in terms of mental stress marks, that go through a audio person or a musician's head. For example, some developers I think they might think that it's just, because we're a dime a dozen, it's so easy to just kind of flesh something out, like throw a couple like notes and then do a harmony and do all that stuff. And it's like, no, like we have to see how the project fits with the game and how the document is and how things are going to work and things are going to change. And this chord progression may not work with this because it sounds too moody or too sinister and you wanted it happy and Christmas-like. So I got to change the orchestration palette for the bells. Or they also don't know terminology. So they're saying the melody when they're really thinking the synth lead, and the synth lead is not the melody, it's the counter melody. So just terminology gets mixed up. And I think it's due to just miseducation or slight ignorance, and ignorance I mean in the most pleasant way possible, just meaning as it is, like they're just not informed. The misconception that it's hard to work with audio people, and it's not. All you have to do is just kind of ask us, hey, like, we're working on this thing, we would like to know what your budget is for this and how much you charge, and we're looking to hopefully hire you or get some rates to understand, because everyone's time is valuable, whether it be the writer or the artist and whatnot. There's so many. I mean, could go on, but I'm just thinking of like all these other things that people think that it's just so easy to like kind of write the music or do the sound. It's like, it's not. We have to maybe build a Foley stage because the sample libraries didn't exist. Hi, I did that. Yeah. I had to build that Foley stage. And then I wrote an article to help others so they didn't want to be in my pickle. Because, if it didn't exist, then the game doesn't have that identity and that sound. And then gamers they're just not clued in, and they notice. Like, you guys notice when I listen to past episodes and stuff like that, you guys mention certain things that I'm like, yep, I would have noticed too, right? Because you're playing the game, you're involved, you're included, and any type of missteps or gaps that are going to occur, the gamer will notice. And I feel like it's important that audio needs to be not just always on the back end, but in the forefront out there with the artist and the programmer working together, because then we could just make it that much better for the end product and the collaborative art for the player.
Yeah, there are so many pieces that go together. And, music is one that I think is a little bit easier to forget about, or not forget about, but kind of forgive in film. Because people, for whatever reason, absorb it in such a way that they don't even recognize it's there half the time. But if you stripped it away, they would recognize it. And in gaming is very much the same way. You're very conscious of sound the entire time you're playing, because it is such an interactive medium. I think that, and it's not just slapping a soundtrack on it and calling it a day. It's just like film. You need to evoke a certain mood,
exactly.
or moment. And so I like to think of boss battles. Boss battles are so pivotal, I think, in timing and composition, and the way that they're constructed, because there are beats and moments in boss battles that you expect the player to get through. And so you need to be able to compose and write for those and anticipate those, I think.
It's funny you mentioned that. I definitely concur with you on that statement, that sentiment. I actually have a couple boss battle ideas in the tracks and things that I've heard from the past and games, and I'm like, oh, what if we did this and what if we did that? I'm not reinventing the wheel, but I'm doing a little bit different, fresh ideas. I think that's important. Like, if you try to do that at the end, then you're gonna get something slapstick together, and it's probably not going to be that great, and it's not going to make an impact. And
yeah,
we want to make an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned you also do orchestral music, and you have some piano composition pieces as well. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because you have something coming up. And so I was kind of hoping you could tell us a little bit about that project.
Oh, yeah. I was commissioned to do an arrangement for a symphony orchestra by the college I graduated from, with this Cal State Northridge. The Gamer Symphony Orchestra will be playing an arrangement that I did from the game Shining Force, and it is a battle piece. It's called Battle 4. I am super excited to have this played by the orchestra. I was actually in the orchestra while I was in college for a very tiny amount of time, and it is because I couldn't fit it in with the rest of my schedule that I had. I was there for about, I think, like 12 hours if I had stayed and did the rehearsals. Even though I had like a 2-hour gap between then, it was just difficult. But I had a little bit of fun while I was there, and so I was very honored to ask, even after I graduated, for someone to ask me to hey, could you do an arrangement for our orchestra? And we're going to be playing some pieces. And so I was like, yeah, definitely. This was one of the ways that it also helps me boost my chops in terms of I get to study the music. I get to create sheet music for other orchestras to play if they ever wanted to play at college orchestras or professional orchestras, maybe at Video Games Live or wherever in the future. And that makes me feel like I'm giving something back to the community, which I really, really enjoy.
So I take it you're still, and that's awesome. I think you're still kind of, you regularly interact then. I assume as an alum there, it sounds like as well.
Yeah.
Or at least they regularly interact with you, maybe is the way to put that.
Yeah, they're interacting with me. I don't know what happens when maybe the liaison graduates. Maybe they'll still reach out based off of the arrangement and whatnot. It seems like the torch is always passed. And then I can always reach out as well and be nosy and poke my nose and say, hey, what are you guys up to? Do you guys want this?
Awesome.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. That's awesome, though. I mean, that's great. And so when are they actually performing it?
I believe they are performing it, I think it's December 8th.
Okay, awesome. I guess the other question I would have then is, because I knew you were working on that, is there any other projects that you've been working on for specific games or anything you can talk to us about with that as well? Or are you kind of in an in-between stage?
Yeah, I am actually scoring and doing sound design for the game Aground. This is a utopian type of mining game where you're the player, are collecting resources and building up your inventory and your equipment and figuring out what kind of path you kind of want to go down based off of being stranded on an island after your ship, ran aground and stuff like that. So you could do a science path or you can do a magic path. And then there's other treats in the game that go on. And there's about 2.5 million players collectively through Game Jolt, Congregate, Newgrounds, Steam, itch.io, and I believe, and Armor Games. And so I've been on the project for about a year, and now I'm full-time working with Fancy Fish Games on that title. And I'm very excited. I am just having a ton of fun writing for this game. And I'm so happy that the players are enjoying the game too. And they really, really inspire me every day when I see comments about how much they love the music. Again, like they're playing and they're listening, so they know. And when I see things on Reddit or I see reviews and I'm mentioned in the Steam early access part of the reviews and on Twitter or somewhere, like I'm just so grateful because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is nice when it pays off.
Good. Yeah, I'm just happy that they're enjoying it. And that because also I sometimes do not know if it's going to fit and be well. Like the team likes it and that's great. And I'm happy that they like it because if they don't like it, then I go back and I change things. But the community is the ones that are giving the most honest feedback. And if they're loving it and the streamers are loving it and the community is loving it, then I'm happy. And that just gives me more fire and more fuel to come up with better things and do things differently that I haven't done before and push myself further as a musician and a sound designer.
Yeah, cool. That's pretty huge. Could you explain a little bit of like the back and forth? We've like talked like voice actors before and like, how they give out samples and like, the company may come back with, oh, can you do it this way or can you do it that way? Is that the same kind of process for you as a composer, or do you have a little bit more kind of leeway as to what you do and what you kind of produce for them?
Well, with this specific developer, I have a lot of creativity, but the first thing I always like to do is set up an asset list to kind of get a general idea of how much music is needed, how long is the tracks that are being composed, the file types, the descriptions in terms of the mood and the emotion, what their setting is, what their environment's like, or if it's towards a character. And this kind of sets the foundation in terms of how I'm going to begin working on the music or the sounds, because then I'm free to go and then I create what I feel based off of words that I read will come to fruition in terms of, hearing, and then I send it off to the developer, or sometimes I can implement it myself And I actually prefer that because then I don't have to bother the programmer, and I can be my first quality assurance chain in command and say, hey, this is bad, or, oh, this is great. And then I get their feedback. Maybe if I'm working on a team of, 5, I run it by the artists, I run it by the programmers, the game designers, the writers, or whoever, and get their feedback and take some things with a grain of salt if I need to. And most of the time it gets approved. I'm very lucky. But again, I think being a gamer and actually playing the games help, because then you understand what things are supposed to sound like and what they're supposed to do. So, it's like I always tell other people, is like, if you wanted to be a film composer, you'd probably watch films. It's just that simple. So that iterative process happens, and then once it's approved, I do the last polishing. I listen back on different formats. Like if it's going to be on console, I try to test on different TV speakers, different headphones. If I feel like the player is going to be playing with headphones, like the more expensive headphones, the cheap headphones, the Apple phones, and then my normal studio monitors, the car speakers. I do a very thorough listening back and forth for that before I send off the polished version. Once they like the sound initially, because most of the time they don't really know that the quality is going to be better, unfortunately. But I like to know that, hey, the quality is going to be good when it leaves. So if it's going to be on the phone, I put it on a Dropbox, and then I listen to it on the phone, the speakers. And if I don't like it, I go back natively and I change it till it's right. And then when it's done, I push it through a server, either through it's like GitHub or cloud service, and push the assets to the developer, and then we either implement them together or I do it myself, and then it's good to go until I'm all the way done with everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I can already hear Dave yelling yes on the other side of this recording, because he does that with our podcast every week. Yeah, I listen to it in the car. I listen to it on the speakers. I know you guys too much alike. That's great though. I was just checking out. That's awesome that you're able to kind of think about that and plan out, well, what's it going to sound like on speakers, on headphones. That's a side, I think, that as much as I'm cognizant of what you guys do and cognizant of what game designers do and what voice actors do, that's something I don't often think about. Is there's a variety of systems in which people listen to or experience game sound, game design. And so it's important to kind of just hear that from all angles. So that's awesome.
Thank you. Luckily, I made a few friends where I don't have to do the mastering myself. And so when I'm mixing it and mastering it, quote unquote, to the best of my ability in terms of what the game is, but then when the soundtrack needs to come out, then I get the mixes up and then push to the mastering engineer so that that's on a different level, because I get ear fatigue. So even when I'm writing or if I'm doing sound, I always take if I'm working for 2 to 3 hours, I take about an hour break, sometimes an hour and a half. I need to be sure that my ears are fresh, because sometimes what I thought that was like a really cool riff is like, and I'm just like, I come back and I'm like, oh, hell no, we got to change that. What was I thinking? That was good when I come back from an hour break or something like that.
When you take that hour break, do you just sit in silence since you've just been listening for 2 hours, 3 hours? Is it like a meditative silence?
Sometimes it depends how it depends. Like I write at low levels unless I get then near the end, like I'm feeling I pump it up a little bit for like maybe 30 minutes and I'm feeling it. But it depends how intense the music or the sound design that I'm doing. If I'm doing sound design, I definitely have to listen to nothing or just not have anything on my ears or be around any type of thing musically. Maybe I'll just clean or organize, the room or something like that, or lie down. I take naps more now. I'm older, so when I was younger in my 20s, I didn't take naps. When I was a teenager, I didn't take naps, and now I'm older and I'm like, oh yeah, naps sound good. But
naps are amazing.
I'll have to be careful because my hour break will turn into like 4 hours, and then I won't want to do anything.
Yeah, you got to set an alarm every once in a while,
Yeah. So I got to check myself before I wreck myself.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned about pumping up the volume towards the end or whatever. Do you do anything? Because I'm thinking right now of athletes and how they use music to kind of pump themselves up. But if that's what you're doing as far as composing and you need to pump yourself up because you want to write a boss battle or you want to write something that's kind of intense, what do you do to kind of get yourself in that kind of mode that's not musically inclined because you don't want to like sway yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. So back to what I was talking about earlier. Remember what I was saying when if like I'm listening to video game music most of the time, like maybe if I'm just like driving, or I'll even listen to podcasts, or I'm listening to music, and I vacillate more often than I need to be right now, because like my brain is like, oh, I don't want to listen anymore, and I turn this off and I turn that on. What happens is I end up having a journal. And whenever I've listened to stuff in the past, if I'm not working on that right away, I'm like, ooh, this would be good for X, Y, Z. And I bring out my journal. I have 3 journals. So that I bring out, for this case, the composition journal. And I write in the reference that I'm listening to or that I heard that day. And then I just have it and I put it away. That way it's out of my mind. I don't have to think about, man, what's the name of that song? Oh, man, like I really need it. It's going to be good. I don't have to do that. The other thing is, sometimes from playing a lot of games and collecting a lot of games, I own a lot of retro games, about 700 in my collection. I'm very ashamed, but we're going to get through that.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Don't be ashamed of that, though.
But playing those games and seeing those other things have shown that I can reference those back to what I need to in terms of like, oh, this idea for this and this idea for that, if that makes any sense. So I have an audio journal from music that I've listened to in my past, and maybe I've written it in, and then I can go back and reference that, and then I can do an amalgamation of styles and conflate it together. Or I can just play a couple different games, and I get extremely penchant to play those games, and I figure out how I can play them, or put them in all the systems, whatever that I own, and play the game, and then I get an idea, and then I'm able to be juiced to do that type of music.
Okay.
Cool.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned retro games and things like. Do you have a game you go back to often? Let's just say like once a year that you feel the need to play. Like, do you feel the need to go back and be like,
yeah,
I feel real bad about that Donkey Kong on that Game Boy. I need to go back at least once a year and make it worth it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so there's 2 games. Okay, no, there's 3 games in my life that I've played twice, or at least. I want to say 4 games, and I think I know them by heart. Beyond Oasis on Sega Genesis, Final Fantasy Legend 2, Final Fantasy 7, and recently Breath of the Wild.
Okay.
That's something I can name off the top of my head. I'm sure there are about like 3 others, but it's very, very rare that I'll go back and I'll be like, oh, I really need to like play this now. I think Tomb Raider 1996 was the other one. Like I was like, I need to play this. Like I just have these fixes. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this. Have you ever just been somewhere randomly in the day, and then whatever the lighting is, depending on what's around you or whatever's in your mind, you're just like, I want to eat that food now, or I want to watch this thing now, or I want to play this thing now. Like it just happens out of somewhere, I don't know how, and it's like you just want to do it, and you just feel like you have to fulfill that fix.
Yeah. I think 100%. That's why we're laughing, because Matt and I will text each other and I'll be like, Matt, doesn't this remind you of The Last of Us? Like, and I just have this itch to go play The Last of Us because I saw like a rusty barrel and I'm like, that makes perfect sense. You know?
It's the most random things that trigger that kind of memory.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
When those happen, it's really difficult because sometimes I don't have my Dreamcast with me, or I don't have that Dreamcast game nearby. I don't have, Bangai-O near me or Sonic Adventure, and I can't go play it.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, are there any games you're currently playing right now that you mentioned the ground because you're working on it, but is there anything you're playing for fun right now?
Oh, yes. So I am playing Castlevania Lament of Innocence right now.
Okay.
On PlayStation 2. Now, funny story is I moved to my new house in April, and I thought I was going to be able to put a TV in my room, and it was like the perfect setup to have it with my monitors and everything. It could be above. I was like, this is going to be boss. It's going to be so cool. And that didn't happen. And so my housemate has a really nice, like, smart TV in the room. But I was like really coy about hooking up my video game system. First, the PlayStation 4 didn't have enough holes in order to get some ventilation. So I was like, I didn't want it to overheat. So then it finally clicked in my head. I was like, man, I could just hook up the PS2. I got like 3 of them. I have the tiny one. So that doesn't need any ventilation really as much as the PS3 and PS4 does. And then like I said, I have a backlog of games that I'm trying to get through, and I promised myself I'd get through based off of my bookshelf, and that was one of them. And I finally hooked that thing up, and it's November. So, and I'm glad I did, because I need that break. And it's usually like scoring, and I play the game aground a lot, and I haven't played much. I mean, I have played other games, but what I usually do is I port things to my PSP, because I haven't jumped on the Vita Island train yet. I just still use the PSP. I'm using the PSP ship right now, and I'm very happy with that, and I'm enjoying it, and usually that's what I get. And yeah, so that's what I'm playing currently. I was playing a different game that I can't remember anymore. There's been a lot of games I've been playing off and on throughout the year, but that one has caught my attention. I'm happy. I have wireless PS2 controllers. I'm sitting back, I'm kicking back, I'm relaxing, and I'm struggling to see the screen with the graphics because it's so damn old. But I'm having a good time.
What strikes me as funny about that kind of admission is the fact that you have this backlog that goes back to PlayStation 2, and I'm sure Rob is right there with you.
Oh, no, I have a backlog that goes back to PlayStation 1, actually. I was playing, what was it, Abe's Odyssey before I moved, and it's still in my PlayStation 1 in my closet, and I'm like, I should just hook that up.
It's tough. I mean, the games are not like they used to be, where, you had one that came out every few months, or, I mean, as a kid, I remember, you joked about Donkey Kong, but I remember I'd play the same like 5 games over and over and over and over again.
Right.
And now I've got like 10 games going that I'm trying to juggle at once, but I'm playing like a half hour of this one, 20 minutes on this one.
Yep.
And I'll probably never finish any of them. But I've also come to, and I don't know if this is the same way with you, Chase, I've come to accept the fact that I will probably not finish some of them. But as long as I've played enough of them that I've felt like I understand what it's doing, I can appreciate it, I'm okay with that, I think.
No, absolutely. I definitely concur with you on that one as well, because being a professional in the industry, I can only play so much, and I will get hooked in. Like, my girlfriend would tell me, or even my ex-girlfriend would tell me, like, you need to relax and play some games. It makes you happy. And I'm like, you don't know, like this, it really is real. Like, I will get sucked in and be lazy. It won't be addicted. I will get up and use the bathroom, and I will eat, and I will sleep. But I will play for hours and hours and hours if I really, really like a game. One of the reasons why I didn't buy Batman Arkham Knight, because Arkham City had me like sucked in. I used to close my eyes and go to bed at night, then saw detective mode. So I know the feeling. I know exactly what you're saying. Like, I feel the other thing I was going to say was, yes, I'm a perfectionist, and I used to love playing on hard mode, but I can't do that anymore. I need to play on easy just to get through it, because I realize, and what I'm hoping sets me apart from other composers and sound designers, is that I've at least played the games that have the catalog. So when I have something to bring to the table and saying, oh yeah, you played that game? Yep, I played that game. Oh, you played that game? Yeah, I played that game. How about this game? Have you played that game? It's like, oh no. And now I'm educating them, and now they're inspired because they've thought they've played games or a lot of, and they come in there just like, I thought he was just doing audio. Like, oh no, he really is in this. He's passionate about it. He can give more than just an audio feedback. So just by playing the game and having something there, and I'm totally fine now with not beating it. And because Cave Story taught me that I'm not going to be able to beat these games. So.
Oh yeah. I don't think I ever finished that one either.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's such a benefit. I mean, it's got to be a benefit for you as far as when you're kind of going out for these jobs or talking to these producers about, getting the composition job. I'm sure that does nothing but go in your favor. Like, oh, he's played all these games. He's really into this. He's really shows he's passionate about like every aspect of this.
Yeah, it happens. What I realize is, like, when I'm in person, most of the time I can get my energy across in terms of like how we're speaking now, just like through audio. But when I'm in person, my energy about it, I'm just as animated as I am talking to you now as I am in person, if not more. And if we click on that one thing, like, oh man, did you totally do that thing? Oh, stop it. I'd like want to hug you and like pick you up or something and laugh. And, you would have thought I had a few drinks, and I'm just high off of the enjoyment of what I've played and happy to have the experience. I'm just that little child that, is like found the secret that you found when we only had those little games. And you were like, no way, there's 13 Shinra dolls? Oh my God, I have to go home now and finish it. No homework tonight.
Awesome stuff. So I'm gonna shift us a little bit here.
Sure.
Just because you are very much up on things, and I know you're very up on PlayStation culture and gaming culture as well. I was going to ask you if you saw today, as we're recording this, if you saw the Game Awards. I don't know if you pay attention to that at all, but I don't know if you saw the Game of the Year announcements today that came out.
Yes, I am a huge fan of the Game Awards. I actually was trying to score the Game Awards theme. I've been trying to get a hold of Jeff Keighley. Jeff, if you listen to this, hire me for the Game Awards theme so I can write it for you. Actually, last year it was front row, front seat for the Game Awards. I was just so happy. It was me and my girlfriend. We were just like, I thought I was getting the award. I was just so happy. But I don't know if that's going to happen this year. So I had a great time. I did see the nominations, and I was surprised to not see other indie games that were on the list besides Celeste. But I'm happy that Celeste made it on the list. And because it shows that it can hold up to the AAA games that are out there in terms of quality. And as long as I feel as long as a indie title is up there against the AAA games, like there's always a voice, and there's always going to show that those games do have a big impact on the community and that they matter.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Is there a game? That's what I was going to ask you, because I know that you're very much into indie, and I certainly pay attention a lot to the indie scene as well. Is there a particular game? Because I know Celeste was one of my favorites so far this year. Is there another game you thought should have been up there with Game of the Year? Because that's kind of what I'm curious about.
Yeah. I had looked at it, and I looked at it a bunch of times, and then I thought to myself, what the hell came out this year? and because I was working today, that's a distraction moment, right? So that's a rabbit hole that's waiting to happen, and I had to stop it. So, if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of look up the list and give you an answer right now in terms of,
yeah. Yeah, in fact, while you're doing it, I'll tell you what, I'll just give you kind of my feedback.
Sure, yeah.
While you're peeking that, we like to do our smooth transitions here as we can. I actually was leaning towards, I would have loved to have seen something like Dead Cells up there. Yeah. Because I had some time to think about this right before we began. I was kind of staring off into it, and Dead Cells is one that jumps out to me, and I have to check the date on it because I'm pretty sure it didn't come out this year. But I know I've been playing a ton of it, and I know Special Reserve Games just released their. Oh yeah, it's 2 years old. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking Enter the Gungeon, but goodness, that's 2 years old.
Yeah.
So I'll just bite my tongue on that one. But I will say, here's the other one I'll tell you while you're looking that up. Guacamelee 2, but that also might be my bias towards Drinkbox Studios. And I just love their humor. I love their platforming design. Not nearly as frustrating as Celeste, but still super enjoyable. Celeste has me like, I'm still not finished with it. I'm still pulling my hair out over the wind stage.
That's probably going to be a cave story. Oh, yeah.
Then the strawberries, that's what gets me, the damn strawberries.
Yeah. I think the biggest snub for me, as far as like independent games, was Epic Dumpster Bear.
Yeah. I did play a little bit of that, though. Did you actually play any of that, Matt?
No.
Oh, I played like it's what happens if like Flappy Bird and like Super Mario Brothers had a baby.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, tied it down and beat it or something. It's just it's odd. I don't know how else to explain it. It's odd and frustrating and yet bizarre at the same time and funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely thought Celeste and goodness, I already lost the other one that I talked about. Dead Cells.
Yeah.
I definitely thought Dead Cells deserved more attention there instead of Guacamelee. But again, I'm biased with Drinkbox Studios. I think they do fantastic work. So
I mean, Celeste was phenomenal. It really was.
It was. Yeah, I mean, some of the other games that are nominated, right? Assassin's Creed Odyssey, God of War, Spider-Man, Monster Hunter World, and Red Dead. Which I'm really surprised about Monster Hunter World because it came out in January and typically. Well, I guess so did Celeste, and people tend to forget about games that came out in January.
Yeah, that's the downfall. Unfortunately, the earlier you release your game, you might get passed up for an award that comes out.
Yeah,
kind of speaking from experience. But it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
I like that 2 of those games are Sony exclusives.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
It really shows the length Sony's going to kind of up their
snag
games.
those. Yeah.
Literally.
Well deserved, though. This is a tough year for
sure.
games.
A lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I was looking at the list here, and although I've played like a couple of these games that I guess like that are coming up in terms of what people were excited for that has come out that might have reached the masses, such as like Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. I had a couple friends that I know worked on that game that came out this
I'm
year.
familiar with that.
And what was the other one? What was it? It was Church in the Darkness. I think that one, I've heard of that one before. But there was like another one that I was hoping that might have gotten, I mean, maybe it wasn't that big. I think it was a Vegeta Boy that came out. And then there was that beautiful, oh man, I forgot the name of it, unfortunately. But there was Tunic, I think is what's called. There was that pretty game, right? What happened to that? Did everyone just forget about that one? Was that not
Probably
not worthy? You know what happened is I think Celeste, when a game really takes off like that, like then people just ride that wave. I remember this happened with Undertale. Mm-hmm. Undertale just like took off, and the rock and fuel just kept coming. So
yeah, it's impressive when that happens.
it is. It really, 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 really is. There was a game that I guess I would have liked to seen on the list, but you know, it's all good. I think it's cool. I think they're well deserved. I'm not sure if like Overcooked or something should have been on there, or Counting Plus, like because they got a lot of stuff last year, right? So they don't need any extra.
Right. But I do love Overcooked. It is the most frustrating co-op game I can think of. It will test relationships.
Oh boy.
Well, yeah, you exclusively play with your wife, so.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, we do a great job of not. It's actually much more manageable with Overcooked than it is in our actual kitchen. We tend to do better there.
You know, a game I really thought might have been on the list in terms of like a AAA title was Detroit Become Human. And I've been slowly moved by that game. I was playing that a little bit and I had kind of stopped because it actually got stressful in terms of like the decisions. But I think that's good. Like, I think that's good in terms like it didn't make me feel too overwhelming. It just made me more cognizant of, hey, these decisions are going to impact not just this person, but everyone else. This is all connected together. And I feel like they should have definitely have been up there, for a nomination. But hey, well,
Yeah, they're on there for Best Narrative, which clearly makes sense given the writing. I mean, Quantic Dream, I feel like, is always up there when it comes to like their stories.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, the Brian Deckard, who played Connor, is on there for Best Performance.
Yeah. He's such a nice guy. I got to meet him at E3.
Oh, nice.
And I got to meet David Cage, who nobody saw. And there was like 6 people for David Cage and like a whole line with security for Brian Deckard.
Yeah, he really took off. I know I shot him an email months ago about coming on here. And he was like, I'm just so busy. He's like, I don't know if I can. But he was nice enough to at least get back to me on it right away.
Yeah.
But he really took off. I mean, he's done quite a bit with streaming when the game came out too.
Oh, yeah.
And so
that was really smart.
Yeah, it was. It really boosted his profile, I think, as far as an actor for gaming. So
yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chase. We'll kind of wrap things up. Do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about where we can find you, where people can check you out, how they can contact you? Give us kind of a lowdown on your social media life.
Sure. Yeah. My Twitter, which I'm most active on, is at Chase Bethea, Chase, B as in boy, E as in Eric, T as in Tom, H as in Harry, E as in Eric, A as in Apple. Super simple, all together. No underscores, no periods, just Chase Bethea. You can tweet at me, message me if you are looking for music, for anything. And my website is the same, www.chasebethea.com. And then if you want to find me on Facebook for my professional page, not my personal one, because I probably won't add you because I haven't met you in person. Maybe. I have a very selective, but yeah, that's Chase Bethea Audio Virtuosity. That's too hard to remember. Then you can just, find me on my website, shoot me an email, or just tweet at me. I'm on there.
And you upload quite a bit of stuff to SoundCloud too, right?
I upload things for a ground recently, but SoundCloud's been really funky lately with their terms of service. I might move things to clip.it, CLYP.it, I think. I've been using them off and on for a year now, and I'm thinking about migrating over. But I do have a SoundCloud. It is Chase-Bethea-1.
Yeah, we moved away from SoundCloud because they were not quite as functional as I'd like them to have been at times.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Well, Chase, we appreciate you hanging out with us today and chatting with us a little bit about games and composition, and we love talking to guys like you because it's fascinating, I think, and I hope our audience enjoys it too, because it's just great to hear kind of the other side of development for the medium that we love so much. And so I know it's given me a newfound insight into this, and certainly hopefully it gives our listeners the same. But thanks again for dropping by and hanging out with us.
Thank you both for having me. I love the work you guys do, and I always like listening to what you guys have to say, and it's really an honor, so I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, we appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, guys, remember, you can find us on, go check out Chase, and you can find us certainly on Podbean and Spotify and everywhere else as well. Thanks for listening, and until next time, game on.
Game on.
Skank 'em.